Many drummers struggle to find that one snare drum that will excel through multiple genres. And searching for that versatile snare drum can lead you down a rabbit hole and a pretty large snare drum collection. Now, speaking from experience, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to have too many snare drums, though you'll find yourself reaching for the same 1, 2, maybe even 3 snare drums regardless of the gig. So in this Snare Saturday video, I'll guide you or that drummer in your life in finding that 1, maybe even 2 snare drums that can handle it all. Yo, what is going on, everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video, I'm going to help you find the best snare for a varied drummer. This video is to help you determine what drum would best fit your needs and be versatile enough to handle various genres and playing situations. Now, before we dive into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. Now, full disclosure here, with this video, I am not going to recommend a specific drum to you because at the end of the day, it is all user preference. Now, although various drummers might have similar sound preferences, there might still be some discrepancies which would allow one drummer to prefer one snare drum or brand over another. So with this video, I'm going to go over those few things you have to ask yourself, which then will show you what drum would best fit your needs. That first thing you have to ask yourself is, what are the styles of music that you play? Understanding your playing style and the genres that you are playing will help you narrow the scope to getting that sound that you're going for. This allows you to prioritize those tonal qualities that you are hearing with those specific genres. Also, do you want a snare drum that has a long sustain and overtones? Or do you prefer something that's more direct and punchy? Answering these questions will help pinpoint those essential features of your ideal snare drum. Because again, this is all user preferred. Now, if you're looking for a more direct, full-bodied sound, then I would recommend you looking into a wood snare drum. And don't let the stigma of maple being better than birch deter you from looking at different species of woods. Because if you looked at just those two, both sound fantastic. It's just that birch is a little bit more direct and maple is warmer. Wood snare drums have a shorter sustain than metal snare drums of similar depth and diameter. And that is because if you were to hold up a piece of wood and strike it with a stick, compared to a piece of metal with a stick, that piece of metal is going to ring out more because that's what metal does. Now, when you were asking yourself earlier, what are some of those sound characteristics that you hear in the genres that you play? If you are looking for something that is a lower tone, then consider looking for a walnut or mahogany snare drum. These two species have a lower fundamental pitch than some other woods that are on the market. If you don't want something really low, then consider beechwood, maple, or birch. Now, although beech is a lower fundamental tone than maple or birch, it's not that dense of a wood and is pretty lightweight, so it has this airy sound to it. In return, you can tune it up a bit higher and still get a direct cracking snare drum sound. If you are looking for a snare drum that has a bit more warmth to it, however, that's when you want to consider maple. If you are somebody who prefers a more direct sound, then you want to consider birch. All three woods are pretty versatile, so you can tune them to be pretty low and thuddy or higher and bright. Now, if you would prefer a brighter sound characteristic out of your wood snare drum, that's when you want to look into a cherry snare drum. Cherry is a wood that has a brighter sound characteristic, which can help provide a more cracking snare drum tone. Now, if you are looking for a snare drum that does resonate a little bit more, then you might want to consider a metal snare drum. And some of the most common alloys are steel, aluminum, brass, bronze, and copper. Steel is an alloy that is really bright and direct. If you're going for a sound like Chad Smith from the Chili Peppers, then a steel snare drum is what you want to go after. If you don't want something that harsh per se, then you might want to consider aluminum. Aluminum has a versatile tuning range and a more forgiving overtone than brass. Now, if you're looking for a snare drum with a long sustain with a lot of warmth to it, then you want to consider a brass snare drum. Brass overtones have a long sustain. However, they can be a little unforgiving if the drum is not tuned correctly. Now, this could be a sound that you are going after with the genre of music that you play, but if it isn't, you might want to steer away from brass. Which brings us to this similar relative, bronze. Now, bronze has a similar characteristic to brass in regards to the warmth of the drum, but the overtones are just a little bit more direct. Now, if you do prefer a drum that does project really well, but is drier with a lower overtone, that's when you want to consider copper. As you're navigating this journey, at this point, you should have asked the questions to help you identify the material that your shell is made out of. Which brings me to the next point. The depth of the shell matters. If you are somebody who prefers a more direct sound, then go for a drum that has a shallower depth. If you want something that has more sustain, go for something that is deeper. This also brings us to the next point, hoop selection. Now, most snare drums are coming with either triple flange hoops or die cast hoops. So if you are somebody who is preferring a snare drum with longer overtones and just sounds a bit more open, then you want to consider triple flange hoops. If you are looking for a drum that is a bit more direct, then you might want to look into die cast hoops. Besides hoops, all of the hardware does affect the sound of the drum. And there are a few people out there who say the majority of your snare drum tone is coming from the head selection you put on the drum. However, the hardware you select is going to determine the amount of holes that are drilled into the shell and how much of that hardware is making contact with the shell, or maybe even a gasket to prevent it from digging into the shell, which are all going to affect the overall tonal quality. This is why an 8-lug drum with tube lugs is going to sound more open than, say, a snare drum that has 10 single-sided lugs, so 20 lugs in total with gaskets behind it, because that would create additional holes drilled into the shell and more hardware is attached to it as well. So now that we have gone over all of those things, you should now be a little bit closer to determining which drum would best fit your needs. So now it's time for you to ask those questions to yourself if you haven't done so already, and apply the knowledge that you got from this video to finding the snare drum that would be the most versatile for you. Also, I want to know, which drums are the most versatile for you? Make sure that you leave them in the comment section below, letting me know. And if you have any other additional questions as you are on this journey, or maybe you are looking for specific recommendations, feel free to put all of that in the comment section as well, and I will try my best to answer. You can also check out the older videos from the Snare Saturday series, where I am showcasing various drums from metal, wood, different depths, diameters, and even age. I've put links to some of the more iconic snare drums in the link below so you can hear them for yourself. Now, if you are a drummer who has been using one or maybe two snare drums for the majority of your playing career, go ahead and experiment by discovering new drums. For the longest time, I would only play wood drums, specifically steam bent solid snare drums. That was until I finally played a metal snare drum and realized I was missing out on a lot of tonal qualities. So go ahead and experiment for yourself and try something a little bit different. You might be surprised with what you hear now in person. You might enjoy it a bit more than those drums you always reached for. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. Not only does it make it easier for others to find it, it is a free and easy way to support the channel. If you are looking for additional ways to support the channel, however, I have a few affiliate links in the description below. You could also consider giving this video a super thanks or becoming a subscriber to the channel, where you'll get exclusive perks. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on the best snare for a varied drummer. And until next time, see you later.